Tonight, a heart-stopping day on Wall Street as the Dow suddenly plunges nearly 1,000 points. But was it the financial crisis in Greece or a trading error in New York? I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, caught on tape. The alleged Times Square bomber buying fireworks. And it turns out he left a getaway car near the crime scene. The race is on to get a containment dome over that leaking oil well as the first wave of crude hits the Gulf Coast. And they've reached what they call the age of elegance. 60, 70, and still strutting their stuff.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And good evening, everyone. Watching the stock market today was not for the faint of heart. Prices took the biggest bungee jump in the history of Wall Street. And the question is, why? Traders looked on in horror when late in the day the Dow suddenly plunged nearly 1,000 points or 9% in just a matter of minutes. Then just as suddenly, a recovery began. But the Dow still finished the day with a loss of 347 points. But what caused that record plunge? Was it the images of rioting in Greece and fears that the financial crisis there will spread? Or did someone on Wall Street make a huge trading error, dumping far more stock than intended, igniting this massive sell-off? Anthony Mason is our senior business correspondent. And Anthony, what a day.
Yeah, it felt like 2008 all over again, didn't it, Katie? A sudden and frightening free fall in the market. The Dow at one point was down 998 points. What pushed it to the edge? Well, it all started in Athens.
Another day of street riots in Greece deepened worries on Wall Street.
Does Europe, in fact, have the ability to take the tough medicine it needs to take and get back on its feet economically to start to grow again?
The fear is that the Greek debt crisis could become contagious and create a domino effect among other weak European economies like Portugal, Spain, Ireland, and Italy, and ultimately undermine the global recovery.
A lot of people have been calling for a correction. You know, they never ring a bell, and you never know what the reason is, and it always happens for reasons you least expect.
And at 2:20 this afternoon, a sell-off suddenly turned into pure panic. The Dow, which was at 10,600, went over a cliff, plunging more than 600 points in less than 30 minutes. But almost as quickly, the fever broke. By 3 p.m., the markets had regained most of those losses.
Remember, we do a lot of computer trading down here, so that came in and just pushed the market right down.
Two stocks had terrifying falls. Procter & Gamble dropped from $62 a share to $39 in minutes. And Accenture, which started the day at $42 a share, collapsed to just a single penny before both recovered.
This is probably one of the scariest things that I've seen in the street in close to 30 years.
And according to reports, the panic may have been provoked by a trading error, by someone who simply pushed the wrong button.
It's bewildering, it's intimidating, it's frightening, and obviously something has to be done to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. It's very, very unfortunate.
The panic has subsided for now, but the markets are still uneasy. The Dow has lost more than 600 points over the past 3 days. Katie?
And if the trading error theory turns out to be true, Anthony, how can someone do that, push the wrong button and start something like this?
Well, the story going around Wall Street today was that a trader at a major firm placed a sell order for $16 billion instead of $16 million. Now, when that happens, it can have a cascading effect, essentially triggering a series of computer sell-offs that can lead to what we saw today.
And I understand this is called a fat finger trade or something like this, but aren't there safeguards against something like this happening?
On the New York Stock Exchange, there are what they call circuit breakers for stocks. Those circuit breakers kicked in today, but the stocks can then be sold on other markets, which is what happened.
Anthony Mason. Anthony, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
John Soropoulos is a journalist in Athens and writes a blog called The New Athenian. The violent protests come in the wake of severe cuts made by the Greek government in order to secure international rescue loans. Why is the public reacting so explosively over these cuts?
Well, in a word, they are angry because they do not feel that taxpayers and ordinary middle-class employees should be the only ones to bear the burden of financial mismanagement by politicians for the last 30 years. They want accountability. They want transparency. They want the political system to account for itself and to change.
How did Greece end up in this catastrophic financial situation to begin with?
A lot of it is corruption at the highest levels, mismanagement of the economy, failure to plan for the future, for future competitiveness, failure to invest in the private sector. Greece is still 50% state-controlled in the economy, and some of it is demographics. In a population of 11 million people, the workforce is only about 4.5 million. 1 million of those people work for the state or the government, which means that the other 3.5 million workers are paying their salaries as well.
What kind of ripple effect is Greece's collapsing economy having on European markets?
At the moment, it seems that not just European but world markets are looking at Greece as some sort of test case of, I think, how much a society can bear, how much social unrest can be processed politically, and how much austerity can be imposed in a short period of time.
How concerned are you that Greece will fall into a state of complete anarchy?
Well, I think that after the events of the last 2 days, people have begun to talk about the possibility of this for the first time. People are beginning to worry that the political system may actually grind to a halt, may actually become dysfunctional. So there is now, for the first time, real fear that if the political leaders don't reach consensus, this may escalate into something unmanageable.
John Soropoulos, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
In other news, here in New York, the alleged Times Square bomber is still talking, and police and federal agents are trying to determine if what he's saying is true. Justice correspondent Bob Orr has been following the investigation from the start. And Bob, it looks as if the suspect left plenty of evidence behind.
Katie, there's no doubt about that. Sources say Faisal Shahzad is showing no remorse. He maintains he did it alone and he believes in what he did. Fortunately, he did not do it well.
It's the latest evidence to surface connecting Faisal Shahzad to the failed car bomb. This video shows Shahzad in a Pennsylvania fireworks store buying the same kind of firecrackers found in the smoking SUV. But Shahzad left a long trail of clues. Sources say the day before he drove the explosives-filled Nissan Pathfinder into Times Square, Shahzad drove a different SUV into the heart of Midtown Manhattan, and he left it there. Shahzad parked his white Isuzu on West 38th Street, intending to use it for his escape. But the next night, when his car bomb fizzled, Shahzad panicked and left behind in the smoking SUV both the key to his apartment and the key to the getaway vehicle. Investigators later used both keys to quickly link Shahzad to the attack, along with critical evidence from a phone call. When the FBI began scrolling through calls Shahzad made on a prepaid cell phone, they found one call to the same personal number that Shahzad had provided to customs agents when he re-entered the U.S. from Pakistan 3 months ago.
Now, during ongoing questioning by federal agents, Shahzad has provided useful information, and we will continue to pursue a number of leads as we gather intelligence relating to this attempted attack.
Shahzad has told interrogators he's had contact with major terrorist operatives inside the Pakistani Taliban. And he claims he drew inspiration from al-Qaeda cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, who's been previously linked to both the underwear bomber Abdul Muttalib and accused Fort Hood gunman Major Nidal Hassan. Still, Shahzad insists he acted alone.
He says it was his individual act. I would not tend to believe that.
Sources say there is evidence that Shahzad and a Pakistani friend visited a mosque and a terror training camp run by the same terrorist organization, blamed for the killing of Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. But the FBI has not confirmed that Shahzad had any help from overseas terrorists.
We're going to take a serious look at it, both in terms of what it tells us about what he did, but also importantly, as importantly, if not more importantly, what it tells us about what others might be doing.
Shahzad claims he's angry about U.S. predator attacks on Pakistan, but investigators say financial pressures may have helped fuel his rage. Sources tell CBS News he defaulted on both his mortgage and another $65,000 equity loan. And video taken just after the FBI raid of Shahzad's Connecticut apartment shows the 30-year-old Pakistani-American man lived a Spartan and seemingly lonely existence. A weight bench that passed for furniture, a collection of art supplies,
A largely empty kitchen with a solitary plant on the counter. And in the bedroom, a rumpled air mattress on the floor. Investigators also want to know who paid for the attack. It cost less than $3,000 for the SUV, the materials, and the plane ticket out of town. Of course, Shahzad also had to pay for a train ticket home from Manhattan when he locked his keys in that burning car. Katie?
Bob Orr at the Justice Department, thank you. Now to that massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Today, crews hauled what amounts to a giant funnel out to the undersea well, hoping it will help them get control of the leak. But as Mark Strassman reports, another arrival dominated the news today. Crude washing ashore.
Landfall. The first wave of oil spilled into Louisiana's Chandeleur Islands. Locals call them the Cajun Bahamas. Pristine wetlands poisoned by rusty-colored oil. This image drives response efforts here. Today, BP got ready to lower this steel and concrete box, 4 stories tall and nearly 100 tons. Engineers hope it will cover a leak a mile underwater and funnel oil to a surface ship. But no one's ever tried it at this depth. By seaplane this morning, we went back into the Gulf and saw rolling ribbons of oil, some that looked a mile long, approaching the Chandeleurs.
Oh, wow, this is not good.
Despite frantic efforts to stop them.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
Down below, shrimp boats with absorbent booms looked mismatched against approaching slicks.
As the spill floats out here in the Gulf, moving toward land, it changes over time, becomes less toxic and more sticky. Eventually, it becomes like tar and clings to almost anything. That stickiness becomes the big threat to marshland and wildlife.
This is a very valuable opportunity to see some of the oil.
We gave this bottle of spilled crude to Ed Overton, an oil spill expert at LSU. On Tuesday, we scooped the sample from a slick out in the Gulf. Tests in Overton's lab confirmed that 2 weeks in the Gulf had diluted the oil's toxicity. But he sees the other hazard.
As this oil moves closer, it looks to me like it's going to stick to everything.
As BP burned off more oil today, environmentalists worry about the unseen damage, all the marine life that swims near the surface. And with another 200,000 gallons pouring into the Gulf, it's like battling a new oil spill every day. BP has also fought the leak with more than 160,000 gallons of chemical dispersants. Molecules in the dispersants attach to the oil and break up its density. The oil droplets then sink to the ocean floor. But dispersants include toxic chemicals, so toxic, critics say they do more harm than the oil itself.
Just because we don't see dead birds on the beaches doesn't mean that we don't have a serious wildlife problem.
Late today, Interior Secretary Ken Salazar said that companies involved with last month's oil rig explosion had made, quote, very major mistakes, and that BP's life was very much on the line. A complete safety review is underway, and Salazar says the federal government will issue no new offshore drilling permits for at least the next 3 weeks. Katie?
Mark Strassman reporting tonight from Venice, Louisiana. And coming up next on the CBS Evening News, identifying cancer-causing chemicals in the environment. The risk of getting cancer is often linked to our genetics and our choices, like smoking. But today, a presidential panel said it's time to take a hard look at the environment for potentially cancer-causing chemicals in our daily lives, like the water we drink and the household products we use. Here's Dr. John LaPook.
Yes, we're here.
Like many Americans, Gail McDonald worries environmental factors like cell phones may one day cause cancer in her children.
They see, and I'm as guilty as anyone, all we moms on the phone, on the Blackberries, and they start to mimic it.
Today's report says more research should address fears like hers. The authors say environmental causes of cancer have been grossly underestimated.
We think environmental factors are causing cancer.
The presidential panel notes more than 80,000 chemicals are used in the U.S., and only a few hundred have been tested for safety.
Most Americans all across the United States have close to 200 synthetic chemicals in their body.
The report says so far there's no conclusive evidence that some chemicals found in everyday products cause cancer. However, it recommends certain lifestyle changes. For example, even with no proof cell phones cause brain cancer, the group advises limiting their use or wearing a headset. Some other recommendations? Avoid microwaving plastic containers. Use ceramic or glass instead. filter home tap water to remove possible toxins, and check home levels of radon, a naturally occurring gas that causes an estimated 21,000 lung cancer deaths every year.
Maybe the research at the end of the day will tell us there's nothing to worry about, and I'm hopeful. That's what I really want to hear. But in the interim, I want to be proactive.
The report authors are not trying to scare people. Their point is, even though the impact of things like chemicals and cell phone waves are hard to evaluate, we still have to do it. Katie?
All right, John LePuc. John, thank you. And this note, Sunday is Mother's Day, and a survey out today suggests motherhood in America is changing. Women having children after 35 outnumber teen moms these days. That's the reverse of what maternity rooms were seeing 2 decades ago. 41% of mothers are unmarried, compared with 28% in 1990. And more than half of mothers have been to college. Still, when asked why they had their first child, nearly half said it just happened. They're still counting votes in Britain, but exit polls suggest there's no clear winner in the national election. David Cameron's Conservatives are projected to pick up the most seats in Parliament, but not enough for a majority. If that happens, Prime Minister Gordon Brown's ruling Labour Party will get the first chance to try to form a coalition government. In New Mexico today, NASA test-fired a system designed to save astronauts' lives. The plan is to get the crew and their capsule away quickly if their rocket fails during launch. In the test, the unmanned capsule shot more than a mile into the sky in just 20 seconds. Soon after, the parachutes opened and the capsule floated safely to Earth. And coming up next, the Golden Girls. As we prepare to honor our mothers this Sunday, hi Mom, we end tonight with a group of ladies, 18 of them, who altogether have 59 children, 100 grandchildren, 16 great-grandchildren. And as Barry Peterson shows you, more pep than a lot of women half their age.
You would be forgiven for blinking hard and looking twice. The Sun City Poms are used to that when they perform at high school pep rallies.
At age 78.
And used to a little curiosity.
Can I touch your legs?
They're a little younger than you.
Yes, they are, but they sure are cute.
I think they thought you were cute.
Oh, yeah. They thought I was their grandma.
Grandmas who even have fans during marching practice.
I've always loved them. They are still beautiful.
The Poms started more than 3 decades ago. Candidates must be at least 55 years old and live in Sun City, Arizona. The Poms have been a regular at the Fiesta Bowl parade for more than 25 years. They even showed off their moves at the Super Bowl pregame show in 2008. Whoever said youth is wasted on the young hasn't met these women who are evidence that growing old can be a kick. Ladies.
Pat, I think you come in here.
A choreographer constantly fashions new routines.
Make your movements nice and sharp.
They practice twice a week. Women who know a lot about life.
Life is a cabaret, old chum.
The girls are just like a sisterhood. The rewards that we get from performing is really overwhelming.
Costume changes come fast, 4 in an average show. And they will literally stand on their heads to please a crowd. At 78, Pat Weber is the oldest.
I'm the grandmother of the group now, and I love it.
She has 15 sequined costumes in her closet and 1 secret weapon.
The pantyhose covers all the multitude of sins.
High school pep rallies are a favorite performance where age meets youth. But the question is, which one is which? Barry Peterson, CBS News, Sun City, Arizona.
You go, girls. And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. Good night.